Law enforcement are being honored nationwide, but here in White Bear Lake, they're being recognized in a very unusual way.
Mass shootings continue to dominate the nation's headlines, but have you ever thought about what you would do if you were confronted by an active shooter?
We'll tell you how you can potentially increase your chance of survival. Welcome to Lake Area Beat. I'm your host, Tracy Minarchuk.
And I'm Kurt Friesen. How are you, Tracy?
I'm good. How are you, Kurt?
Good. Good.
It's nice not wearing a mask.
It is. It is, yes. It's nice to be outside and enjoy the weather too.
Yes. It seems just as our nation begins to recover after one mass shooting, another occurs.
Our very own Tracy Minarchuk has some helpful advice when it comes to an active shooter.
Run, hide, fight. Those are 3 things that we want people to do in an active shooter type situation.
Have you ever thought about what you would do if you were at a fair or a sporting event and someone took out a gun and started shooting? It's a situation we may not want to think about, but mentally preparing for an active shooting may very well increase our chances of survival.
What would I do if I were out with my family? We were at Market Fest or we're at the beach. Where would I go?
On a cold and windy spring morning, we met up with White Bear Lake Police Officer Tracy Minarchuk at West Park, a location for summertime celebrations, to talk about imagining the unimaginable.
Sometimes when we are in the middle of chaos, our brains just shut down and we do nothing. And so we don't want you to do nothing. We want you to have a plan. We want you to run first, hide if you have to, and then look around you for weapons to fight with.
According to the FBI, there have been 277 active shooter incidents in the United States from 2000 to 2018. 884 people were killed and more than 1,500 wounded. 2017 saw the highest number of casualties due to the worst mass shooting on the Las Vegas Strip, resulting in 58 deaths and 546 injuries. And just last month, 10 people were shot dead in Boulder, Colorado, including a police officer.
Active shooters want to have the most damage. They want to kill the highest number of people. And as responding police, my job coming into a park like this is to stop the threat, stop the shooter.
Officer Minarchuk points out local law enforcement will arrive first, as she said, to stop the threat. They won't tend to the injured or talk to bystanders. She says if you want to help, make sure you have detailed and accurate information to convey to dispatch. If you're somewhere with children, like a park, help get them to safety. And if you can help the wounded, only do so if you're not in the hot zone. White Bear Lake Police and Fire Departments provide CERT training, a community emergency response team, to volunteers, a potentially valuable resource during any emergency.
If you have to fight, you have to fight.
Officer Minarchuk says most things we carry, a purse, keys, hands, can be used as a weapon. And if your only option is to fight, be aggressive and commit. The Department of Homeland Security advises recruiting others to ambush the attacker and be prepared to cause severe or deadly injury. FEMA also provides active shooter conversation starters on their website. However an active shooter situation ends, it really begins with being aware of what's happening around you.
And just the mindset of you're gonna win and you're gonna survive and you're gonna get out of here, instead of the mindset of, oh my gosh, what's going on? I don't know what to do, and just standing there. We want you to have a plan. Very important information and something to think about, stuff that we don't like to think about, but good to think ahead of time, right?
Absolutely.
Planning.
Good advice, yes.
Thank you. More than 60% of Minnesotans are organ donors, and the young man in our next story made the decision to become one when he got his driver's license.
His decision has given many other people another chance at life. Here's his story.
We would think he was throwing away egg cartons, but he was actually stashing them in his closet, as well as milk jugs and everything else. And one day he came downstairs, I think he was about 12 or 13, and he had made a robot. I don't know how long it took him, but it is the funniest thing.
When Dr. Rolanda Schmidt talks about her children, her energy seems to take on a life of its own.
I would say 8 months maybe. He had blue eyes when he was born for 2 years, and then they changed to green.
Much of her life is now spent talking about her youngest son, Giovanni.
So there's Gino with my oldest, Gino with Roger's daughter when they were younger.
Giovanni, 18 years old, was intelligent, wise, and living with autism. And Dr. Rowe, as many refer to her, says Gino was always pulling pranks and pushing buttons.
I remember him getting his license, and it took him a while, probably 5 times because of the high-functioning autism that he lived with. But the 5th time he came home, the driver dropped him off, and he said, "Mom, I didn't make it." And I said, "Well, it's okay, Gino. We'll get it next time." He goes, "I'm kidding," So I was like, I just remember those times of him laughing.
Getting his driver's license meant more than just a teenage rite of passage or a sense of freedom. It would eventually come to mean life for as many as 70 people.
I went to go look for him, and I can speak to you calmly right now because I've been through trauma therapy for a year. But I went to find him, and he was hiding behind a door, balled over, like curled up, and he was crying like I had never seen him cry before. And I said, "Gino, what is wrong?" And I rubbed his back, and I told him that I loved him. And he said, "Who's on the phone, Mom?" Those were his last words to me.
Dr. Rowe, on the phone with Giovanni's school, says she walked away from him to answer the door. The school had sent police to their home after his friends told school officials about text messages he'd sent saying he was planning to take his own life. Just moments later, she heard a loud bang.
I don't know if they pulled Giovanni up, but I could hear his last 3 breaths, and that's just all I remember. And I'm like, it must have dawned on me. I said, "Gino," and I'm calling out his name. And it's just something you'll never, ever, ever forget.
The police wouldn't let her back into the house, and she and her husband drove to the hospital, hearing almost immediately from the doctor that Giovanni wasn't going to survive.
I held his hand, and it was just cold as ice. It was cold as ice. I was just like, wow. Like it's a feeling that as a parent, it's just something that you never want to go through. And it will haunt me, forever because I knew he was gone.
Soon after, a nurse told her a representative from LifeSource, an organ procurement organization, was there to speak with them about Giovanni's organ donation.
I looked at my husband and I'm like, "You're going to have to talk to them because I feel like I can't even breathe." And the nicest person came. They made it like such a beautiful process to tell us what would happen at that moment.
Dr. Rowe's attorney had been on the waiting list for a kidney for almost 4 years, and it was the first person they thought of when talking about his donation. It turned out he was a match.
How does that happen? So we've asked him for a bill since, and he won't send us a bill. So, yeah. So Gino gave life and wiped out our attorney bill, I guess.
A 20-year-old received Giovanni's heart, someone his liver and skin, and another his eyes. She's written to the recipients through LifeSource and waits and wonders if she'll hear from them, for it's up to the recipient whether or not to respond.
Whoever has these eyes, I want to see them someday. So, I'm sure that they're just as handsome on them as they were on him, or she.
Everywhere you look, there are reminders of Giovanni on walls around every corner.
And there's G again. He's just, it's, the memories will never leave.
And even on furniture, his dog Roman waits and wonders if his person will return.
I think he can still smell him. I do. I don't know how, but he wore this thing like almost every day with the autism spectrum, I think of it, creature of habit.
Dr. Rowe's pain is raw, and she questions herself daily, wondering if there was more she could have done to save her son.
Some days I blame myself. Like, was I a good mom? What could I have done, just all of those things go through your head.
Part of her journey is sharing her story through motivational speaking in her podcast, Uncovering Truth with Grace, relying on her faith and knowledge that through his death, Giovanni has given the gift of life to many, and she hopes someday she'll get to meet those who now live through him.
I'd like to know because he saved lives, and I just want to know how he lives on and who he lives on in.
We're going to take a break, but coming up,
We'll tell you how a local organization is making mental health services easier to access for those in need.
Hey everyone, what a year. Living through a pandemic has put a mental, physical, and emotional strain on many of us. And I think it's important to talk about the fact that there are a lot of people struggling. But there are things we can all do to minimize our stress. Knowing when to shut down the news is important for our mental health. In the past year, we've been inundated with negative news stories because frankly, there's plenty of bad things happening. This includes taking a break from social media. The body and mind go together, so make sure to take care of your body. This includes eating healthy, exercising regularly, getting plenty of sleep, and avoid drinking too much. Make time to unwind by doing the things you enjoy. Connect with other people. You may find they're feeling the same things you are. Finally, know how and where to get treatment, including counseling or therapy. It's okay to ask for help. Once upon a time, it was taboo to talk about our mental struggles, but we all have them. Reach out if you find you can't help yourself. There are plenty of resources available. Take care and Happy New Year.
Wish to thank everyone for attending this year's Suburban Ramsey County Law Enforcement Memorial Ceremony. It is important to recognize and pay tribute to these Suburban Ramsey County Law Enforcement Memorial Ceremony. It is important to recognize and pay tribute to these unnamed police officers. We remember each of their sacrifices and we honor their memory.
Chief Walter Hall.
COVID has presented challenges to many organizations and industries, including the arts.
During cutbacks and layoffs, one local group got a call that changed everything. Producer Mary Klein and photographer Nick Anderson have the story.
Honestly, at first thing I thought was it was a hoax, that it had to be, something had to have gone terribly wrong. And he even said at one point, "Are you there still?" And I said, "Yes, I don't know what to say."
When executive director of the Lakeshore Players Theater, Rob Thomas, answered this phone call last December, it was an answer to a prayer. With the arts and entertainment industry taking one of the toughest beatings during the pandemic, the center's income and donations had taken a beating too.
We immediately stepped back and we looked at, what were we doing? We reviewed our mission over and over again and realized that there are people in our community that are going to need us more than ever.
Unable to perform live shows in their theater, Thomas says they brought programming online, moved education classes outdoors, and held concerts in their back parking lot.
So I think this summer the stage is going to be over here as opposed to back there.
With staff laid off or furloughed, that phone call came at the perfect time. It was an estate attorney letting Thomas know Betty Wold Johnson had passed away and bequeathed the center her summer vacation home worth $2 million.
To her, it was about what we were able to do for her community, the community she loved. So she wasn't a big theater goer here at Lakeshore. She didn't come to a bunch of shows or anything, but she knew the impact we were having on the kids in the community and the people seeking arts and enrichment in our community. And that's what she decided to invest in.
Johnson, a matriarch in the Johnson & Johnson family, was born and raised in Minnesota, and her family used this nearly 5,000 square foot mansion in Delwood as a summer retreat. Betty eventually moved to New Jersey and the house was eventually sold, but her connection to the community never left, and she bought the home back in the 1980s.
Everyone's like, you should always have a plan B, and we're sort of on plan G, plan H by now, so.
As part of their ever-evolving response to the pandemic, the center will soon announce their summer education guide, hold an outdoor production of Company in their parking lot this July, and begin streaming a production of Beehive next Friday, recorded here in the 250-seat theater, all vacant since COVID.
The year before COVID, we had about 360 volunteers throughout the course of the whole year.
Thomas says this year has been an experience he never could have imagined when he dreamed in his youth of running a theater. And like a page from a script, that one call from an estate attorney will be a defining moment in not just his career, but his life.
This is one of those moments where, you can look back on your life and you can pinpoint certain things that you're going to remember forever, and this is definitely this is a once-in-a-lifetime thing for me.
Mental health services have been made easier and more accessible through a local organization with a long history.
With an increased need during the pandemic, people are taking advantage of this opportunity. Here's how.
I think this has been a really great year for folks to be able to start normalizing the conversation about mental health and mental well-being.
For 45 years, Northeast Youth and Family Services has been providing mental health resources to suburban Ramsey County.
At Northeast Youth and Family Services is a trauma-informed center, and that means it's not only how we interact with our clients, but how we create physical spaces within our clinics and how we interact and support each other as a team.
President and CEO Tara Jabin Singh came into the position just as the pandemic was hitting last spring. Her challenge was to continue services at a time when they were needed most.
I will say that creating a cohesive staff when people are just little squares on the Brady Bunch screen on the TV or on a Zoom call versus being in person, it's not the same.
NYFS serves clients regardless of their ability to pay, and Jabin Singh says they've seen an increase in the un- and underinsured. They partnered with the City of White Bear Lake, who provided them funds to help meet the needs of the community.
We have certain dollar amounts and funds that help us support those services, and we're going through them at a pretty good rate. Luckily, though, I will say that the community and some of those grants have met the greater need and have added a little bit of extra funds to support those services.
The money helped facilitate the technical changes due to COVID, including telehealth services, conducting over 5,500 in the last year. They also created workshops and programs and were able to provide 3 free sessions for anyone in need of them, skipping the formalities of a traditional mental health setting.
We understood that in these times, you just might need to sit down and have some strategies to say, my child's having some anxiety about going back to school. What are some ways that I can support them that wouldn't necessarily need such a formal setting?
The organization serves people of all ages and partners with 15 municipalities and 3 school districts, offering mental health and senior chore services, youth diversion programs, and community advocacy. Between their offices in White Bear Lake and Shoreview, there are 40 on staff, those working on site ensuring safety measures are maintained.
There's a lot of components here that you just go home, and it's a very rewarding job.
According to a survey conducted by the CDC, Minnesota's mental health is better than most states, but still nearly 28% reported experiencing symptoms of anxiety or depressive disorder in the most recent data available, and young people seem to be most at risk.
These 2 offices here are for our school-based therapists. We don't really see them too often because the schools are open back up.
With family referrals down during the pandemic, they're back up now that kids are back in school. Jabin Singh, who says her family benefited from mental health services, is grateful to give back in her role and encourages anyone who's thinking about it to reach out.
If there's any part of you ever that thinks it might be time to ask for help, assume that it's the right time to ask for help. At worst, you'll end up having a friendly conversation with somebody who's there to listen, and at best, you'll get tapped into the services that are desperately needed for you or your family.
Yeah, I think our crews have noticed an increase in mental health calls, and I'm glad that there's help out there for those individuals.
And I'm glad people feel safe calling us for help.
Absolutely.
Calling you and calling the police department too. Coming up after the break,
A much anticipated tribute was released on Spotify just in time to honor frontline workers.
the man in our next story has a reputation for charity, and he's recorded a song in the past honoring firefighters.
There was a holdup on the release of his latest song, but as fate would have it, the song premiered just in time to honor healthcare workers and law enforcement.
You're a rock star, remember that. You're a rock star. At what you do in your profession, that's what you are.
Before former firefighter Jeff Lokes got behind the microphone, he watched his colleagues in healthcare working long hours throughout the pandemic, the stress on them taking its toll. Not one to sit back and watch from the sidelines, he knew he had to stand up for frontline workers, including law enforcement.
I know a lot of healthcare workers have dealt with depression and law enforcement as well, so I just felt like I had to find some kind of way to give back or just let them, my peers know that I care about them.
Jeff's no stranger to laying down tracks. He recorded his single, This Is an All Call, here in Bat Cave Studios, where he's now finished recording his anthem titled Rockstar.
How I used to do everything was through music, so that of course came back through my mind that I could do something. And of course, I'm always going to go to Jason when I think of something like this, because he's been so nice to us and helped our charity so much. So, this should cost a whole lot of money, what we just did, but he's been so generous.
Musician Jason Medvick, owner of Bat Cave and guitarist for the Devin Worley Band, got a team together to build upon Jeff's vision, giving his time for this charitable project.
And try it a couple of different ways, and what I think we should probably do.
Medvick, who has family in law enforcement and healthcare, says they don't get the recognition they deserve, which is why he said yes to producing Rockstar.
They need a nod that, hey, we're still thinking about you, we still love you, we love what you do, we know you put your neck on the line day in and day out, and I don't think they get enough respect for that, so.
Medvick, who's written over 100 songs in his career, wrote the music to accompany the lyrics Lokes wrote. Lead singer Devin Worley wrote and sings the chorus, while Lokes enlisted family and friends to contribute. The song will be available on Spotify, iTunes, and SoundCloud. Lokes says his motivation isn't about going viral or song sales, but simply honoring these men and women who are rock stars in his world.
I just wanted to reach people on a personal level. I just want, healthcare workers and law enforcement just to know that it's a nod to them, I don't ever have anything more in mind than that, don't care if something gets really big or not, but I just want them to be able to listen to it on their phones and their cars and just know that, that's for me, or they're talking about me.
You're a hot rod car, you're a superstar.
Well, and thanks to Jeff for putting that together.
Yes, he does a lot for the community, and he really cares a lot about law enforcement and healthcare workers, and he appreciates all of us, so thank you.
Yes,
we appreciate
absolutely.
that. So what's next for you in the fire department?
Yeah, it's been busy in the fire department. We received our new ladder truck from Pierce a month ago, roughly.
And it's a big deal because it
fits. It fits in the station. The crews are really happy with the design and the layout of it. It's already been used on a handful of fires, so we're excited for it. The crews are happy to use it. It replaced our old American LaFrance that had seen better days. So we're excited for the new technology, the new truck, and I think it's going to serve the community well. We're also going to be using it, and it's going to be part of a live burn exercise we have coming up later in the week. So we'll have it there. Crews will get familiar with it and continue to practice with it and become more efficient in operations and comfortable with how it's laid out. So it's a lot of stuff going on in a short amount of time. I know we're working on getting things back together as a community with, you know, PR events and different community events that are starting to pop back up for later in the year. So I'm excited to see where that goes. I'm sure the police department is as well.
Yep, finally able to get back out in the community and talk to people and not have a mask on our face.
Absolutely. So
yeah.
Yes.
Exciting,
all good things.
exciting summer coming up, I think.
Absolutely.
Way more exciting than last year. That wraps up this edition of Lake Area Beat. I'm Tracy Minarchek.
I'm Kurt Friesen. See you next time.
Three, two,
Oh.
squirrel.
Yeah, no, I was watching the dog walk by,
Okay.
so I'm good.
Yeah, there we go.
You guys really have to learn that, you know, you're probably going to get like 60 to 70% out of me all the time.
Sorry, little slip of the finger.
Yeah, that'll
this
happen.
thing's very sensitive.
Must be the new one you haven't dropped yet.
Oh!
Thank you, thank you. I'll be here all week.
I believe that's what you call a burn.
Yes, you nailed it. Good job.
Look, Tracy, I can read.
I'm so impressed with you today.
I'm so glad you guys are so impressed when I actually can do it in one take.